Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
A magic beyond anything you could ever imagine.
You are now listening to the Hunt Palmer Show. Brought to you by Sagrera Farms on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge. Locking down the middle of the day.
You really think that's the best idea?
Live from the Raising Cane studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
It's quite a piece of work.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Raising Cane studio downtown in the capital city on this Thursday, working towards the weekend, brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef. Got Jordan Kitchens, Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. We'll preview left field for LSU coming up in 15 minutes. I learned some things today about LSU's left fielder that I didn't either remember or know at all as of last year. We'll get into that in 15 minutes. Trinidad Chambliss, waiver denied. What does it mean? I'll talk about it later on in this hour. Chris Blair will be along at 2:15 talking Tigers. Joe Healy start off our weekly chats about SEC baseball. He's, of course, with the D1 Baseball SEC Extra team. We'll talk to Joe at 1:30. Moving forward, he's got a podcast, preseason podcast. That's not going to be a regular thing that he's got to do today, so we'll bump him back to 2:30. I want to talk about a few things with Joe. I want to talk about Tennessee's new head coach. I want to talk about Kason Evans moving from the closer's role to the starter's role at the front end of the rotation. That's happening in Austin, Texas as well. Get some thoughts on that. I think it's interesting what's going on at Florida over the last 6 months with Kevin O'Sullivan being out and then back in. Paul Maneri has lost his ace. How big a deal is that? So lots of SEC baseball, big picture discussion with Joe Healy coming up at 2:30. We're getting closer and closer. We are 8 days from first pitch out at the box, so we'll talk a little bit of baseball today. And we're getting closer to the Super Bowl. We got to talk a little bit about that as well. Our Thursday show, as I mentioned, brought to you by Sagrera Farms. Let's get it started the way we do every day with our opening drive.
Welcome to the big league.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive. Presented by Fabry Chevrolet GMC in St. Francisville.
So Lane Kiffin met with the media yesterday. It was right before we went on the air, so we didn't have time to play any of the sound that he actually produced at the mic yesterday, but we discussed some of the things he had to say. It wasn't before, it was while we were on the air, I should say, yesterday at 2 o'clock. So now we've got some time to marinate on what he had to say. I've been able to go back and listen to it, and I think some of the stuff was interesting, specifically on the recruiting side of things. We don't know anything about Lane Kiffin, the LSU football coach, other than hiring a staff and recruiting players. We don't know anything about spring practice. We don't know anything about media availability. We don't know much about the way he's going to handle injuries. We don't know anything about the way he's going to coach at LSU. We don't know anything about his long-term recruiting plan. I think we're just getting to know Lane Kiffin, but we do have a cycle's worth of frantic roster building to go off of, and that was a lot of the talk yesterday with the questions the media had to ask him. And the first bite we'll play here today is about LSU's NIL plan. And when I say NIL, I mean name, image, and likeness. You also group revenue sharing. It's essentially your resource allocation in the roster. And this is what Lane Kiffin had to say about what he experienced with LSU going through this high school and portal cycles.
I'm not going, nor will I ever really get into the details exactly, obviously, of the resources and the breakdown and how we use them, but just felt in the plan that there was a really good plan here in place and an alignment from the top down. So number one, the resources to do it, which is important, like I referred to, but then a plan of how do you use the resources, which is not our expertise contractually and NIL contractually, third parties, and then to combine that, which I think what is our specialty is the evaluation of the players, because again, you can have money, just like you've seen in any sports and salary caps, and do you evaluate the guys really well? Do you not just get the top end guys? Do you get the next tier, and do you get them for really good deals? You know, by the way that you evaluate them, by the way that your scouting department evaluates and your coaches, and I think that's our specialty. So putting those two things combined, I think puts us where we are.
I've mentioned this a few times on the air. It is something that's been very apparent early on in learning about this staff. We knew when Lane Kiffin brought Charlie Weiss Jr. and George McDonald and Kevin Smith and that offensive staff, we knew they were good at coaching offense on Saturdays. Like, we knew that. No matter who the quarterback has been, no matter who the number one wide receiver has been, no matter what the pieces have been up front, Ole Miss has moved the ball and scored points. We knew that. And so it would stand to reason they would be very confident in their ability offensively to produce points, and they are. One thing that Lane Kiffin is very confident in his staff about is evaluation. And you would suggest in a bygone era that would be vital at Ole Miss or Mississippi State or South Carolina or Kentucky. Not as important at Alabama or Florida or LSU, where you just go get the big boys. You go get the best players in the nation. Well, Ole Miss 15, 20 years ago couldn't get the best players in the nation. Not going to happen. That is not going to happen in Lexington, Kentucky. You can't do it. So what do you have to do? We got to find the diamonds in the rough. You've got to find those 3 stars that blossom. You've got to evaluate that way. Well, now fast forward 20 years, and you can't just go get all the big boys because you can't pay for them. You can't pay all the big boys. Can't be done. You have to, as any NFL team does, as any Major League Baseball team does, as any NBA team does, you have to go get the big boys, but when you run out of the big dollars, you've got to go use the rest of your money to find those diamonds in the rough. And that is something that wasn't as important for LSU. And I realize that's all relative. You still had to go get those 3-star dudes from New Orleans who ended up being Duke Riley and ended up being Deion Jones and ended up being Justin Jefferson. And that was still important at that point, but you still could go get all the 5 stars you wanted at LSU and at Alabama and Georgia 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Now you really can't. So you hear that the plan is to scout, evaluate, and then use the resources properly, which you've got an entire staff that's in charge of how to bend the rules or get through this loophole and make sure that the money that you give these players, which you must to keep them every year, is up above board. And that's something that he had to learn and that he feels LSU's plan is very good in. Now, I thought the most maybe impactful line he delivered was in speaking about getting on the plane to go get Sam Leavitt and getting on the plane to Atlanta and go get Jordan Seaton when those guys had visited Baton Rouge and left. And Lane Kiffin got on the plane and went and saw him. Like, that's not something you saw the last staff do. It's certainly something you saw Ed Ogeron do. I remember very vividly, Ed Ogeron went to Houston when Caleb Von Chason was getting on a flight to go on a visit, and he went through security with Caleb Von Chason all the way to the gate before I don't even remember where he was going to visit, but was at the airport the whole time. So this is something, and look, Lane Kiffin and O work together. They've been on the same staffs. They know the same deals, and Lane Kiffin talked about, hey, getting on the plane and going to see him.
And there's a good and bad to it. I'm extremely competitive, and I don't really do well with no. So that just makes me more competitive when someone says no. So sometimes that happens in recruiting. They say no. But I think that's my job. That's my job to LSU. And kind of on a different note, when people ask about the social media and why do you do it, everything that I do is for the place of where I coach at, for that school, for those players and those fans. And that makes me not very liked a lot of times by other ones. And so my job, I'm hired here, is to go sign the best players, regardless of whether that means I got to go get on another plane or find a plane and show up somewhere and walk through Knoxville Airport, to find the guy. And that's just kind of how I work. And I like that because I think that wires in really with Louisiana people, because I think that's how they think. Like, no job's too small and find a way to go get it done.
That's an interesting bite. It really is. And let's flesh that out a little bit. I, within reason, pushed back on some of the Brian Kelly narrative that he was lazy. Some. That stat that got out there that T-Bob tweeted out about the rounds of golf that Brian Kelly played at a Baton Rouge area country club, I pushed back on hard. I have lived the 100-round of golf life per year. I've lived that life. When I was single and I didn't have a lot of expenses and had no kids, I absolutely carded 100 rounds a year. It is real work to do that. And when you do that, people notice you're out there all the time. I know people who play golf a lot in this city, and I talked to 10 of them, and 10 of them said, no shot. Now, I don't know what he was doing all off season. I don't know what he was doing at 8 o'clock at night. I don't know what he was doing at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm not suggesting Brian Kelly was just a relentless worker at LSU. I'm pushing a little bit back on the narrative that he just mailed it in completely. And I don't know, because I wasn't there, but I'm pushing back a little bit. But something that's become pretty evident about Lane Kiffin since he's gotten here, that guy's juices are flowing. He's competitive. He's up early. He's working. He's recruiting. He's flying over here. He's recruiting this guy. He's working with Billy Glasscock on this. Like he is motivated. And I believe that being motivated at this job, in this university, and it goes to women's basketball, it goes to baseball, it goes to gymnastics, it goes to men's golf that you can win a national championship here in just about whatever you want if you do that. And Lane Kiffin may win 4 national titles here. He may never make a playoff. I don't know. Landscape is very different than it was 5 or 8 years ago. I don't know. But right now, what I know is that there's a lot of effort being put in. That's just very obvious. And putting in a lot of effort at Washington State, I'm not sure what that gets you. I'm not sure. Maybe it gets you in the playoff. Maybe you got no shot and you're just going to go 7-5. I don't know. Putting in a lot of work at Louisiana Tech, I don't know what that gets you. I know what putting in a lot of work at LSU can get you. And it appears that he's putting in a lot of work. And that's evidence to, it's not like, oh, it's just social media. We know he flew to Knoxville to go see Sam Levitt in the airport. We know he flew to Atlanta after a 2.5-day visit with Jordan Seaton right after that just to stay on it. And he won both of them. So that to me is loud. And it's reassuring as someone who wants that program to do very, very well that you've got a guy in the pilot seat right now that's grinding. I will not go into detail here because I just don't know that I need to, but I've seen multiple coaches in this university not grind. And you're never going to just completely bottom out, but you got no shot. And that's not the case with Lane Kiffin. Not right now. He wants to win. And I think that's a big deal. That's something that he talked about yesterday. We'll get to more Lane Kiffin sound coming up in 15 minutes. I'll shift gears over to baseball briefly. I want to talk left field. I wrote a story about it at LouisianaSports.net. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I learned a couple things about LSU's left fielder earlier today when I wrote that story. We'll discuss them when we come back.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group, HighlandIG.com is the website, HighlandIG.com. Look, group employee benefits, important deal. Healthcare for your employees is an important deal. And I talked to Jonathan Carbo in our most recent sit down and said, look, there are a lot of folks calling the Highland Insurance Group right now because they've been with a benefits carrier for a number of years and the increases are coming and coming, and this one has been even worse. So if you're a business owner or you handle the benefits with your business and these renewals are just getting untenable, get a second option. The Highland Insurance Group is not just property and casualty. They're not just captives, and they can do group and employee benefits. They can make sure your employees are taken care of and have the right benefits in place, have the right health insurance in place. So if you're getting that renewal and you're thinking, goodness gracious, it just won't stop, the Howard Insurance Group may have a better option. They're an independent broker. They've got relationships with different carriers. Just sit down and have the meeting with Jonathan and his team. They are happy to do that with you. He's getting calls all the time. He knows where to go. It's the Howard Insurance Group. They're here in Baton Rouge. They can help you out statewide. Find them online at HighlandIG.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Thursday show is brought to you by Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef, some of the best beef in the country. And it's right here, just north of Baton Rouge in Ethel. Sean is so passionate about this project. It started out as a labor of love. Sean just wasn't thrilled with the quality of product he was getting when he went to buy his ground beef, when he went to buy his steaks. So he said, well, I'll just do it. And he got into learning about it and researching about it and got really good at it. Mastered it is what I would suggest, because I've got some of his product in my freezer. But intermuscular fat score is what you're looking for when you look at the grades of beef. You're looking at select, that's 1 to 3 on the scale. You're looking at choice, which is like 60% of the beef that you get. That's like 3 to 8 on the scale. And then north of 8, you're looking at prime. That's what you get at the finest steakhouses in the country. Prime Angus beef. 8 plus is what you're looking for there. Sean's got cows that have been ultrasounded on the farm. 10, 12, 14, 18, 20 on this scale. More than double the standard for prime. If you want a freezer full of flavorful, tender, delicious beef, steaks, chuck roasts, ground beef. We did a roast the other day in the pot. Unbelievable. Do beef a different way. Go to Sagrera Farms. You can get Sagrera Farms beef 2 places, Supper Club and the farm. That's it. Make the short drive up to Ethel like I did. See Sean, see the facility, see the process he's got. Butcher cuts it all up for you. It's dry aged 45 days, raised on grass, finished on grain. It's a wonderful product. We're thrilled to have it in the freezer at the Palmer House. You could too. You just contact Sean at Sagrera Farms. They bring you our Thursday shows each and every week. I'm going day by day, doing a preview of an LSU position group, and we've gotten to left field for today. And left field is not going to be Derek Curiel, who manned left field every game for LSU last year except for one when he moved to center field. Chris Stanfield in game 1 of a doubleheader with Texas A&M had a rough day, had a couple of misplays in the outfield, and just to kind of ease the tension there, Jay Johnson put Curiel in center field and moved Stanfield to left. That switch was made back the next day. But Stanfield's going to move to left field, and that sounds like a demotion. It's not a demotion. Derek Curiel came to LSU to be a center fielder, and he was always going to move to center field this year. Well, Chris Stanfield was supposed to be moved on to professional baseball, but no one called to draft him. So Stanfield came back and didn't even bat an eye when Jay Johnson said, we're going to move you to left, put Curiel in center. He didn't bat an eye. You're talking about a guy who was awarded last year for the work that he's done in the community, has been in an SEC clubhouse now for almost 4 years, an incredible teammate, and didn't bat an eye. And oh, by the way, incredibly productive. I told you in the last segment that I learned some things about Chris Stanfield today that I either never knew or didn't remember from last baseball season. Did you know that in Southeastern Conference play last year, 30 games, Chris Stanfield led LSU in hitting, 326. He hit 326 in league play. Better than Curiel, better than Milam, better than Jones. He was the best on the team. Better than Dickinson, better than Brown, better than Pearson. He hit 326 to lead the team. He also led the team in SEC play with 14 doubles in 30 games. He led the team in runs in SEC play with 25. When you talk about run creation, getting on base, getting into scoring position, and scoring, Chris Stanfield was among the most impactful offensive players LSU had in league play last year. In SEC games, he got on base at a 420 clip. That was second to only Daniel Dickinson. And y'all remember how often Dickinson walked and was hit by pitches last year. For the season, Chris Stanfield hit 298. He was on base at a 414 clip. And he was second on the team in doubles overall in the year. Now, there's a reason that MLB teams did not call to draft Chris Stanfield and sign him. Because his upside is very limited. He has no power, relatively speaking. He hit 1 home run last year. Crazily enough, it was in the postseason, in the regional. Hit it out to right field. He hasn't stolen a ton of bases at LSU. He doesn't have a really strong throwing arm. And his swing is a little bit flawed. Like, he's pretty much a dead pull hitter. He rarely hits the ball the other way. He had a huge opposite field home run in the regional last year. He had a huge infield in 2 RBI single to right field last year in the postseason. But most of the time, he hits the ball to left field. So his upside as a professional is just not really there. But he is a very good college player. Very good. So when I look at projections for this LSU team, like, there's probably not an easier projection on the team than left field. Chris Stanfield's going to hit about 300. He's going to hit maybe a homer or two. He's going to play great defense in left field. He's going to hit, very likely, 7th, 8th, or 9th. He's going to complain, never. And he's going to contribute to winning most games LSU plays. What else could you ask for? You've got to have superstars on your team. Curiel's a superstar. I think Milam's going to be a superstar. I think Brown's going to be a superstar. And you hope that you find 2 or 3 pitchers that are superstars. And Stanfield's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be a first-team All-American. I don't think he's going to be a first-team All-SEC player. But I'm really glad he's playing LSU left field. because he does things that you need to win games. And he does it with a smile on his face, team first. He's just the kind of guy you've got to have. It's interesting that his whole college career changed on a nondescript day in his freshman year. He goes out there. Paul Skeens is on the mound. He's a true freshman. He gets 2 hits. Jay Johnson remembered that. He noticed it. Stanfield goes in the portal. Good numbers, not great numbers. LSU's, at that point, gone to the portal for guys like Jacob Berry, Tommy White, Paul Skeens. They've gone into it for high-end players. Luke Holman, Thatcher Hurd, Gage Jump. These are the guys LSU has grabbed. Not a guy that hit 270 for Auburn, but he's just a great piece to the puzzle. And again, I think that there may be a day based on matchup, or maybe there's an injury here or there where you move him up to hit leadoff or second. But way more often than not, he'll be in the 6, 7, 8, 9 spot in the order. And he won't be feared by any opposing dugout. But he'll produce. He'll hit the ball hard. It's that flat swing, a lot of low line drives. I mean, 2 of the best clutch moments of the season last year for Stanfield. The punch single through the right side in regional play, and then in the final game of the season, Game 2, championship series, LSU's put a run on the board, bases loaded, bang, Stanfield lines the ball into left field, 2 RBI single. LSU hangs 4 in the 4th inning there and never looked back. His heartbeat's going to be slow. He's seen it all. He's seen Skeens. He's seen the College World Series. He's seen the box. He's seen LSU get swept. He's seen LSU in a regional. He's played through falls. He knows what competition's about. It's just, I have so much respect and admiration for Chris Stanfield as a guy who is never going to be a star, but is just such a key piece to what LSU's doing. And I wrote about him a lot at LouisianaSports.net, and then also in those pieces when I preview a position, look at potential reserves. And keep in mind, LSU's outfield is low on reserves. You've got Curiel in center, Brown in right, Stanfield in left. And then, basically, you've got Daniel Harden, who played at Catholic, went to junior college, and has now come back to LSU. He's left-handed. He's a good athlete. He's got real pop from the left side of the plate. And is a junior and might play a little bit this year, but I don't see a lot of room for him. Maybe a guy that will play next year when you lose all 3 of your starting outfielders. And you've got Mason Braun, who may play a little outfield, who's a high school first baseman, maybe DH a little bit. They've got John Pearson listed as an outfielder. I don't see him going out there and playing in the outfield. So it's kind of just the 3 starters, Harden and Braun. That's your 5 guys. I expect the 3 main ones to play every day. Obviously, no more platooning for Jake Brown against left-handed pitchers. So it's among the best outfields in LSU history, I think. Now, there are some that I'm not aware of. I've told y'all many times, I'm not a history book of the early 90s. I can't help you with that. I know Lyle Mouton was a hell of a player. I know Joey Bell was a hell of a player. I know Armando Rios played in the major leagues for a long time. Like, there were great outfielders. But in the modern era that I'm familiar with, like, I would look at the 09 team that had Matsuk in center as a freshman who became an SEC player of the year and was a first-round pick. It had Jared Mitchell in right field as a first-round pick, even though he wasn't insanely productive at LSU. He was a very, very good player, but wasn't like a 340 hitter at LSU. And then you had Ryan Shemp play some left field, and he was a guy that played in the big leagues for a long time. Leon Landry was on those teams as well, who was a high pick and played some high-level minor league baseball. Like, those teams were really good. You had Laird, Stevenson, Fraley. Stevenson and Fraley played in the big leagues, and Laird was a great hitter at LSU. I mean, you had those teams that had Duplantis and Cabrera in the outfield. But this is with Brown, who could emerge as a superstar, with Curiel, who already is and is going to be a top 15 pick in the draft, and then Stanfield, who, as I said, I already know what I'm going to get from him. I already know what his in-season stat line is going to be. It's going to be somewhere between 285 and 305. It's going to be some doubles. It's not going to be a lot of homers. It's going to be great defense. It's going to be in the 7 or 8 hole. That's what it is. That's a comforting thing to have, and he's a big, big piece to what they're going to do. They'll have to overhaul the whole thing this time next year, but we're not in this time next year. We're in this year, and it's a really, really good outfield for the Tigers. So that's a look at baseball for today. Again, you can read along at louisianasports.net for a little bit more. Didn't get through all the Lane Kiffin sound that I wanted to get to. There's some more recruiting talk that we'll get to, so we'll take a time out, come back and do that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Shout out to the folks at Lifetime Roofing. They're online at lifetimeroofingla.com. Had a good conversation with the folks at Lifetime Roofing earlier today, and they want to remind you that, look, they've got that lifetime workmanship warranty. That's workmanship and materials over at Lifetime Roofing. So workmanship and materials, and that's backed by CertainTeed, which is one of the oldest and most trusted names in building materials. You know that you're getting a local company on your roof. You're getting some of the finest quality out there with CertainTeed, and you're getting a warranty on the workmanship and the materials for a lifetime. That's an amazing peace of mind they're offering at Lifetime Roofing. Obviously, we saw what happened last week in our city. Obviously, we know what comes in late summer with hurricanes. Make sure your roof is fortified. Make sure your roof is in the best condition it can be to protect your house and protect the people under that roof. That's what Lifetime Roofing wants to do for you. Check them out at lifetimeroofingla.com. It's Lifetime Roofing right here in Baton Rouge. lifetimeroofingla.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
I'm going to tell you about Fabry Chevrolet GMC. You can find them online at fabrychevrolet.com. I was telling you yesterday, they've got some amazing deals that are running through the month of February. They'll stop in the first week of March, so go by and see them this month if you can. If you're looking for a truck, they've got them at Fabry Chevrolet GMC. All the 2026 GMC Sierras are up to $13,000 off MSRP. Or 0% APR financing if you're a well-qualified buyer. So if you're looking for a GMC Sierra, up to $13,000 off. 2026 Silverados on the Chevy side, you're looking at $11,000 off MSRP or 1.9 APR financing for well-qualified buyers. So you can check out the inventory online at fabrychevrolet.com or make the short drive up to St. Francisville, Highway 61. They're right there. You'll have an unbelievable buying experience, great service after the sale. You know that when you shop with the Fabry family. So if you're looking for a GMC Sierra, looking for a Chevy Silverado, a new truck in this new year, go see them at Fabry Chevrolet GMC. All right, we'll move back to LSU football. Lane Kiffin meeting with the media yesterday, and a lot of the most interesting discussion was about the recruiting, because it's really all we know about what Lane Kiffin has done to this point. And we talked about how hard he's working, his competitiveness, and what you've got to do to recruit in this era, and he's got a really good feeling for that. And part of it is having a general manager that you trust and that is very competent. And Lane Kiffin brought Billy Glasscock to Baton Rouge from Oxford, and Lane Kiffin talked about the importance of Billy Glasscock yesterday.
Billy does a tremendous job for a number of years now. I would like to think that people would say I was on this before other people were, that the value of a GM and how important it is. And it's been for a number of years, but especially as these contracts came into place. But really, if you want the answers of how to do something in college, usually just look to the NFL. They've been doing it a long time, and they do it as well as you could possibly do it in all areas. So I think when you talk about general managers, it's the same thing. Why would you not have a general manager that helps run the entire building with you? And if you look at the best runs in the NFL over time, is it's head coaches and general managers that work together. They're not placed together. They work together, and they're on the same page. And Billy and I now, after being together a few years, it's worked extremely well.
I think Billy Glasscock's a huge piece to what LSU's doing. I've got all the respect in the world for Austin Thomas, and he obviously landed on his feet at a place that a lot of people listening to my voice right now don't care too much for. But I think Austin has got a lot of skins on the wall, and certainly Billy Glasscock does as well. And that's the guy that's in charge of running this ship now, as Lane Kiffin gets into football mode and gets into coaching mode and gets into play calling mode. Glasscock's always overseeing the top, and that's a very, very important thing. Now, one of the things that Lane Kiffin talked about in his opening press conference was the state of Louisiana and how important that was. And we talked about how important Frank Wilson could be to keeping relationships in New Orleans and in Louisiana. And talked about how important this state is, even in the portal era, where you're going to go get Jordan Seaton and Sam Levitt and guys with no roots at all to the state of Louisiana. Getting Louisiana high school players is still important to some degree. And now Lane Kiffin's got to hit the ground running, creating those relationships. And we've seen him all over Twitter, all over New Orleans, in Shaw, going over to Cecilia, going up to Captain Shreve. You've seen him at Calvary, and he's been everywhere in the state over the last couple of weeks. And he's talked about the visits that he's taken to those schools.
The high schools here, it's been great going to them and receiving the feedback. And I've always enjoyed over time coming here and recruit, and just the people. I used to always say it's like they love football. And everybody says they love football. But the high school coaches here and the people around the school, like, they love football. They love coaching football. They love coaching the kids. They genuinely care about the kids, something that's kind of gotten lost a little bit. And so I'd love to sign a lot of Louisiana kids. We had a long meeting this week about that and about finding not the guys that are just on these lists that people put out and all these things as with all the stars, but to go find, because I know over time that there's always been great players here that aren't highly recruited. And so it's been awesome being around.
That's very true. Y'all know the list. I mean, one of them does our morning show every morning from 7 to 10. Jacob Hester, now, he offers from Texas and talked to some really big-time schools, and Nick Saban eventually landed his commitment at LSU, but he wasn't high up on the rivals list, not high up on the scout list at that time. And I mentioned in 2 segments ago your Duke Rileys and your Deion Jones and your Justin Jeffersons, and the list goes on and on and on about guys that Russell Gage wasn't highly thought of. He's played a long time in the NFL. You find guys in this state that are really good football players that maybe don't pop nationally year in and year out, and Lane Kiffin and Billy Glasscock trust their evaluation to find some of those kids. Now, 2 that does not apply to are Lamar Brown and Richard Anderson, who obviously were a big priority for the previous staff in this class, and they secured both of those commitments, and then that staff moves on. And Brian Kelly's no longer there, and then interim head coach and recruiting coordinator Frank Wilson's not there, and you feel like, well, might be some shaky ground. And look, those 2 guys did not sign the first day you could sign. They did not. I think everyone remembers that when I jog your memory, but you had the opportunity, the gates opened, and a bunch of faxes or whatever happens now came in, and Lamar Brown and Richard Anderson waited a day. And it was a big deal. And Lane Kiffin was asked about those 2 guys, their importance, and how quickly he could get to those guys. Now, Lane Kiffin was on the job as of Sunday into Monday when he had his press conference, and then signing days Tuesday into Wednesday into Thursday, and it was a lot of moving pieces, but got those 2 guys to ink.
Guys, to me, that, I get some credit for that when people are like, oh, Lane Kiffin signed the number 1 player in the country. Okay, LSU signed him. I don't know of any other school, like when you take those 2, for instance, that we don't even have a D-line coach at the time solidified, and they still sign with LSU. That's not because of Lane Kiffin. That's not because Frank Wilson. Okay, that's the power of a place that they would decide to sign instead of waiting and having to see everything involved, because they both knew it was LSU. That's why they were committed before Lane Kiffin got here. Big reason why we're here. When you have a place that can do things like that, that's that powerful in the way that kids think, that's a place you want to align with.
Look, I'm gonna opine on that for a second, and understanding that I'm opining on that without knowing for sure, and with an understanding that every case is different. I don't know how much LSU gave Lamar Brown when he was in high school, now that he's in college. I don't know. I don't know how much they paid Richard Anderson in high school. I don't know how much they paid him in college. You're going, wait, in high school? What do you mean? You can pay NIL stuff in high school, and that happens. It's legal in Louisiana. And so I don't know. And maybe those guys were just chasing dollar signs, and LSU was the biggest offer, and they signed. That is conceivable. I don't know that I believe it to be perfectly true, but it's certainly conceivable. And you've got relationships with Frank Wilson. Lane Kiffin's a big name. And certainly LSU's not going to get every single Louisiana kid every single year. But I do believe that somewhere along the line, that these kids that grow up in Louisiana, probably a little bit more specifically South Louisiana, there's going to be a pull there. And that's still an advantage for LSU. I don't know if that pull is as strong to Ole Miss and Mississippi State for kids from Mississippi. When Bama comes knocking on the door, or LSU comes knocking on the door, or Georgia comes knocking on the door, or Auburn comes knocking on the door. I don't know if that pull is quite as strong. and it's not every kid. I can't speak to every circumstance. But if I speak in generalities and I think about high school kids in this state and what happened right after the turn of the century when Nick Saban got Marcus Spears to show up here and got Michael Clayton to show up here and got Marquise Hill to show up here and flipped that narrative where in the 90s kids were going everywhere but LSU. Jerry Nardo helped with that. Kevin Falk was a big deal. But since then, over the last 25 years, there's been a pull. And I don't think NIL and revenue sharing in the portal has destroyed it. Has it weakened things? Sure. I absolutely will grant you that. But I do believe, to Lane Kiffin's point, that LSU, being the flagship school in the state, and the big stadium, and the Saturday Night in Death Valley, and the Heisman trophies in the deal, and all the high school coaches being LSU guys, and like, there's just something to that. And I can't tell you that Richard Anderson and Lamar Brown weren't just holding their hand out for the most amount of money. I have no idea. But I just believe deep down there's something to LSU that helps. Now, you can't just punt and say, oh, they're giving you $1.1 million. All we got's like $25K, but hey, we got a big stadium and we play at night a lot. That doesn't work. But if you can be competitive, you can have an edge, I think. I may never know specifically. That's how I feel about it. And I think that Lamar Brown and Richard Anderson are indicative of that. So just food for thought. That's Lane Kiffin from yesterday. If you're looking for our LSU content, you can find it on YouTube, Hunt on LSU. Our next segment's not LSU-centric, but it does involve LSU because LSU plays them in the third game of the season. Trinidad Chambliss' waiver got denied yesterday. What does that mean, and why do I think it's shaping up like a Hallmark movie? We'll talk about that next.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
A lot of friends over at Ochsner. Look, February is Heart Month. It's a great time to focus on your overall health. Remember, regular checkups absolutely matter because early detection and guidance can keep you on track for a healthy heart. So schedule that primary care appointment at ochsner.org/brprimary. That's ochsner.org/brprimary. And they'll help you along the way. Look, you understand that staying active with regular exercise, great diet with fruits, vegetables, whole grains, managing your stress, getting sleep, avoiding smoking, limiting your alcohol, all those are very, very important in terms of your lifestyle. But also, you need to go by and see your primary care physician. So schedule that at ochsner.org/brprimary. Small steps today lead to a stronger heart tomorrow. Check out our friends at ochsner.org.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Sagrera Farms.
Sagrera Farms Premium Angus Beef brings you our Thursday shows each and every week. Closing up the hour here, like I found so much so much humor in this Trinidad Chambliss case. And it has very little to do with the actual outcome of the case. But here's why. So y'all probably saw yesterday that the NCAA denied Trinidad Chambliss' waiver to compete next season. And you're an LSU fan, you're thinking, oh, sucks for Ole Miss. See you in September. Well, it's not over. Now, Trinidad Chambliss will sue the NCAA. And this is where it, to me, gets humorous. The NCAA doesn't have a home base, according to the law. Because it has member institutions in every state, it's a resident of every state. So the NCAA is having to fight all of these eligibility concerns in the backyard of all the players. Okay? So there have been instances in like Tuscaloosa and Knoxville where the judges have recused themselves because they're big fans of the school. So Trinidad Chambliss, who is likely the Heisman favorite, just played for a team that was in the Final Four in football, in this multi-billion-dollar sport that played in New Orleans and in Glendale and is playing these massive games on massive TV in front of tens of thousands of people. His case, whether or not he will be able to play next year, essentially will be decided by an Ole Miss alum judge in Pittsburgh, Mississippi. If you think, well, I know quite a few towns and cities in Mississippi, I'm not sure where Pittsburgh is. I looked it up. The population is somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 people. It sounds like To Kill a Mockingbird. Like, it's like you're taking this massively impactful suit over $5 million in NIL, and you're putting it in a one-stoplight town in front of a judge who pulls for the football team. If you don't see humor in that, I don't know what you can find humor in.
It's just like
it's unbelievable.
It's sickening. I'm gonna be real, man. I'm sick of it because I remember growing up, you see players, by the league, cause like, man, I wish we can get him for one more year. Like, I wish Leonard Fournette can stay for one more season. Now you got dudes 6 years in, like, no, we need one more year. Like, no, we ain't going.
Here's the deal: if you're an LSU fan and like all you care about is the result, he's gonna win. Like he's going to be Ole Miss's quarterback next year. You may have done your little cheers and chuckle at Ole Miss yesterday when he got his waiver declined. The judge will look at the case and he will look at it and he will determine that he will at least put an injunction on the NCAA to keep them away, and he'll play. It's like the Wisconsin transfer DB to Miami. He played. It's like Charles Bediako. He played. Like he's going to play. They're arguing whether or not the year he didn't play at Ferris State was because he was down on the depth chart and he practiced and just didn't play because he wasn't good enough, or because he was dealing with a tonsil issue and mono and he couldn't breathe and so he couldn't play. Like, and who knows? People are going, what about the documentation? Ferris State's provided some documentation. There is no medical red shirt at that level. So they didn't file for a medical red shirt because it doesn't exist at that level. And now they're trying to retroactively go back and declare that it's an extra year of eligibility. Joey Aguilar's looking for year 100. He played 4 JUCO seasons and then App State and now Tennessee. TJ Finley got hurt twice on the field. So plus he's got a COVID year, so that's how he gets his 8th year, whatever it is. Like, as I've said before, and I got chastised by someone on the internet for it, like, I'm an LSU guy. Would I rather Trinidad Chambliss or Deuce Knight play quarterback for Ole Miss in Game 3? I'll take Deuce Knight. Is that going to happen? No. Trinidad Chambliss is going to win. It's a court case that doesn't involve a jury. The judge is the end all. He's a Delta State alum, but he went to Ole Miss Law School, and Pittsburgh is the cherry on top of this thing. I looked it up on like Wikipedia. It's the size of this studio. There are more people in your church on Sunday, wherever you go, than live in this entire town.
I've seen plenty of those towns in Mississippi. It's like all they got is a church, a grocery store, and that's about it. And a cemetery. That's it. You just drive straight
maybe
through.
they got a new Zaxby's around the corner.
Yeah, and that's it. And everybody know each other in the town. Like,
of course, and that's they're deciding the University of Mississippi's quarterback whether he's eligible to play or not. Newsflash: I know how that one's gonna go. So that hearing will come up in a week, and he'll win, and he'll be the quarterback at Ole Miss. But I think it's like a bad movie. It's like, well, this big high-profile suing the NCAA. Well, where are they hearing the case? Like Indianapolis, New York City? No, Pittsburgh, down the road, 250 population. Judge went to the school.
Yeah.
See how that's going to go. Incredible stuff. All right, we got a lot to do in hour number 2. Chris Blair talking Tigers. We'll also talk SEC baseball with Joe Healy. Missed any of hour number 1? Catch it on demand. We'll pause for national headlines. Be back with some more. It's a Thursday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Swing Easy Golf Club in Baton Rouge. SwingEasyGCBR.com is the website. SwingEasyGCBR.com. Just don't go to the website. Just go see them. They're on Segan at Perkins. Awesome place to enjoy some weekend fun. You don't feel like getting a tee time or being out 5.5 hours playing golf, trying to cram yourself in somewhere. Just get a bay, personalized or with your group at Swing Easy Golf Club. Fire up Pebble Beach. Take on a U.S. Open golf course. Cypress Point. They got that on there as well. You want to play Bethpage Black where they play the Ryder Cup? You can do that as well. Play it from the up tees. Play it from the back tees. You hit your tee shots. You hit your iron shots. It's incredibly accurate software. You do chip and putt as well. They'll deliver you a bucket of beer at Swing Easy Golf Club, too. You can crank the tunes, put some television on. It's a great place to hang out. So go see them at Segan near Perkins. Swing Easy Golf Club, great place to work on your game, great place to hang out, just involve golf in your weekend. We're getting close to the weekend. Go by and see them over at Swing Easy Golf Club.